My name's Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian Financial Channel. It's Wednesday, March the 4th of 2026. We're about 1 o'clock Central Standard Time, so we've got about 3 hours before the silver market closes today. It's been a fairly tame day. If you look at yesterday, you'll notice that we're on an inside day. We've got a much lower high and a much higher low so far. We've still got 3 hours before the market closes, so that could change. Right now we're at about $83.45, which is about $1.40 higher than we started today. And so a fairly quiet day on the American markets anyway. We're still below this $84.52 support line. That was a very temporary line. We just started looking at this a little over a week ago. We broke that support yesterday a little bit, but one day is not enough to really determine that. But today, again, we're a little bit below that, so it'll be interesting to see if we close above or below it. It's not a real big point because it wasn't a real strong support line either way. Our major support right now is at $70. And if we get down and start testing that, I would certainly have my eyes open for that. And if we break down below $70, well, it could keep on going for a while. We were looking at a high of about $100 just a couple of days ago. It was an anomaly. It just blipped up as soon as the bombing began in Iran, but it fell immediately, and we had two pretty significant range days and two pretty significant down days. So right now we're up a little bit. On an inside day that closes up, usually about 3 out of 4 times, the next day is also going to be an up day as well. So you can file that away for whatever it's worth. It's just maybe a point of interest as far as statistics go, but it's not a real significant indicator. But again, we haven't had much movement today, and so we're pretty calm today, and that's something that's saying something. As a matter of fact, if you look at this, we're starting to go back to the smaller ranges that we had leading up to the war in Iran. That may be something that lasts for quite a while, or it may be something that resolves itself fairly quickly, although I wouldn't hold my breath for that. So that's where we are today, a little bit up and not a lot of activity, fairly low volume today, at least so far. And so, so far so good on today. Maybe we'll start getting back to a little bit of normalcy. Yesterday I started talking about the importance of 90% silver, and one of the strategies that you can use when we look at 90% silver, specifically looking at the numismatic part of that. For a lot of us, that's how we got into investing in silver in the first place. Now, I have always been fascinated by coins. When I was a little boy, one of my early memories is of me sitting at my mother's sewing machine, and I took all the little bobbins out of her bobbin holders, and I would stack pennies in those different bobbin holders. And so I can remember doing that when I was probably about 5 years old. When I was about 10 years old, I remember my great aunt giving me some coins. Probably the first silver coin I ever got was a Mercury dime along with a Standing Liberty quarter in a little set that she gave me for Christmas. That was probably back around 1970. And then the first time I can remember getting a coin that I understood was valuable was when we had a Kool-Aid stand in Seattle, Washington, and one of the boys brought in a 1924 D penny as part of the payment. And a friend of mine was also interested in coins, and we both saw the wheat side of it, and I was the one that grabbed it first, and it turned out to be a pretty good penny. I think I still have that cent to this day. But probably when I was a teenager, I started buying coin magazines. I really hadn't ever purchased a coin at that point, but coins were really interesting to me. And so I would buy Coin Age magazine and Coin World magazine, and I just always enjoyed looking at the different coins and seeing what kind of values there were and seeing how rare something was. I can remember even when I was a young boy thinking about how cool it would be to have a coin from the Civil War era. And so anyway, that was what got me interested in it. I started investing in silver in 1981 on a paper silver accumulation program through E.F. Hutton. And then when my wife and I got married in 1982, I started buying a few little ounces of silver. But it still wasn't until the year 2002 that I started collecting coins and buying a significant amount of 90%. And again, this was after years and years of looking at coins and studying coins and becoming familiar with them. And finally, because of silver, I started getting into the coin collecting part of it because I had started buying and selling silver off of eBay in January of 2002. And so that was my journey into coin collecting. And one of the things that I noticed very early on was when I would buy coin collections off of eBay just to get the bullion content. And very often at that point, I was paying about $4 times face, and I would run up to the local coin store in Amarillo and sell them for about $5 time face. But I'd always look to see if I had any rare coins. And as the years went by, and as I began trading more and more in 90% silver coins, I started noticing that there were some people who didn't care one way or another if they had rare coins. They were unaware of it, for that matter. They would just sell their 90% coins. And sometimes when I would get a coin collection in, I was just shocked to find some rarities in that. And I would always just kind of put those to the side and hang on to them. Every once in a while I would sell them to another collector, but for the most part I've kept my rare coins through the years, and that has become the most enjoyable part of stacking silver for me. Now, a lot of you have been involved in stacking 90% silver just from a strategic perspective. You look at it as insurance. You feel like there could possibly come a day where it might be handy for barter. Certainly just the silver content alone is something that you like setting aside because you've studied silver enough to know that over time it keeps pretty good pace with inflation, and there are certain times where it vastly outpaces inflation. And so you've gotten involved in 90% silver for that reason, and maybe in the last few months you've become disenchanted with it. 90% silver is always the first casualty of any run-up in silver. It was true in 1980 when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, and once the market started rising rapidly and everybody started bringing in their old silver coin collections and silver tea sets and everything else, well, they started paying quite a bit below spot value for the silver content of those 90% coins. But that only lasted for a period of a few months. We saw it again around the year 2011, 2012, when silver had a run-up, and for a very brief period of time, 90% silver fell into disfavor, and they were paying significantly below spot price again for the melt value of that silver. But again, that only lasted for maybe 2 or 3 months. And then this particular cycle, 90% silver started, I guess really starting into disfavor when silver crossed the $50 threshold last year. And then as it continued to rise to $60 and $70, there were some dealers that started paying quite a bit back of spot for that. And then probably about December, Brian Vermillion in Florida, who had been paying about the best price of anybody for 90%, started talking about how they were starting to maybe go at a 10-to-1 pace at that time, where they were buying 10 times as much as they were selling. And then there came a point where the refiners started talking about they might not be able to take the silver. And so that was the point where I started selling some of my 90% silver that was just literally junk. I realized that anything that sells for as much as 90% silver does is hard to call junk, but this was my junkiest of the junk. It was my common date 90% silver, and it was often scruffy, it was often scratched and worn. I tried to always sell it with dates on it and no holes, but still, it was the worst of the worst. And in January of this year, I sold about $490 face value of 90% silver because there was a rumor and there were starting to be some evidence that 90% was becoming less and less acceptable. And in fact, when I sold my 90% silver, the last time I sold it, it was for $12 an ounce under spot, which at the time just seemed outrageous to me. But this is what I did with the funds from that, and this is what I wanted to show you can happen during times like this. When silver goes way up, 90% silver will follow, but you still will usually take a discount to the spot price on it. And so some dealers will not even accept it after a while. Because of that, people start selling all of their 90% just like it was all the same, whether it's worn or whether it's uncirculated, and whether it's just a common date or whether it's a rarer date. And so after I sold my 90% silver, I started buying it back. As a matter of fact, I had started doing that before that time because I was starting to see certain bargains. And so this is what I wanted to show you today, how you can take advantage and continue to invest in 90% silver even when it might not seem to make sense to do so because it's in disfavor. And so here is where I'm going to start. Back in September of last year, when silver was starting to advance, I bought a little set, a mercury dime set, and it was a fairly nice set. The coin quality, the condition is very good. I keep mixing up quality with condition. I don't know why I do that. I guess it was because I was a real estate appraiser for so many years. But talking about condition on these, and this is nearly a full set. It doesn't have the 21s or the 16D, but I was able to pick this up at the end of September for $36.52 or 36 times face. So $7.40 face value for $288. So that was about $50 an ounce is what I paid for a near complete mercury set. And I was glad to get that. And then just a few days later, on October the 1st, I was able to come across another set. This was a very partial common date set of Liberty Head half dollars or Barber half dollars. But it was a fairly nice set. There was 39 half dollars in that. I bought it for $608, $19.50 face, so about $31 times face value, or about $43 an ounce. And again, this was back on October the 1st when silver was probably $20 higher than that. And so I'm already starting not only to pick up some bargains in silver, but anytime you can get Barber or Liberty Head coinage for less than spot value, usually it's not a bad idea to pick that up. And then the next set was a month later. I bought a set of Franklin half dollars. Average circulated, nothing spectacular here. There might be one or two that were close to uncirculated. But I bought this for $531, a complete set of Franklin half dollars. And that was right around $30 times face, or about $42 an ounce for silver on the 1st of November. And so now we're starting to see some deals popping up that are actually under spot price for complete sets. And then the next set I bought was another mercury dime set. I bought this on the 11th of November. All these, by the way, are eBay purchases. I know a lot of you don't like eBay. That's great. It leaves it for me. But this particular set, I think, had 69 dimes in it. And one of them was a 1921D, and so a fairly nice 1921D at that. And so I had a good coin collectible value on that, and I paid just about $35 times face value, or $48 an ounce, for a near complete mercury dime set on the 11th of November of last year. And so I just kept on looking for sets. I came across this set on the 16th of December. This is called a short set of Walking Liberty half dollars. It goes from 1937 to 1947. This one was just average circulated. I say average circulated. These were fairly nice quality coins. It included the 1938D, which had a total mintage of 492,000. And so I picked up this set for $660, or 44 times face, $60.82 per ounce. And again, on the 16th of December, we were fairly higher than that. And so this was a good deal, and I was delighted to get that. And then now we're starting to get where silver is starting to creep up pretty good now. On the 24th of December, on Christmas Eve, I actually bought two type sets, and they were fairly, this one's just fairly average one. It was, I believe, let me look, $225 for this. It had 2 silver dollars and about $3 face value of silver. It cost me about $60 times, or excuse me, $60 an ounce was what this cost me. And that does not include the various Indian head coins and things like that that are not silver. And then I bought this one on the same day, and this is a very nice type set. A lot of uncirculated and nicer quality coins, some very good Barber and Standing Liberty quarters in this, and some nicer half dollars, and some 40% Ikes, as well as some 40% half dollars as well. And so this one cost me about $61 an ounce on Christmas Eve, and was, again, a very nice set. Now, about the 3rd or the 4th, somewhere along that in January, I realized I'm starting to buy a lot of coins, and I'm not selling a lot. And so that's when I took, I think, about $70 face value, and I sold it to my local coin dealer. And at the time, I think it was about $8 under spot for 90%. It wasn't a terrible price, but it was certainly a price lower than I was used to accepting for 90%. And then a few days later, I sold $420 face value to SD Bullion for $12 an ounce under spot for my 90% silver. And so now I've got some capital to work with. I've been able to pay off all the coins that I had purchased in the last few months. And again, I'm selling just the average to the worst of my 90%, and I'm exchanging it for collector coins, numismatic coins, and I'm doing it for a fairly decent price. I picked up a small Roosevelt dime set, nearly complete. I think it was, actually it was a complete set. Nothing special there, but $159.50 on the 9th of January. So I paid about $45.93 for per ounce on this. And remember, I had just sold a bunch of 90% silver for $77 an ounce. And so I'm now starting to pick up some bargains and replace what I have sold. The next set I came across was one that I may have overpaid a little bit as far as the silver content, but it was an unusual set. It's a Barber quarter, or a Liberty head set, and the Barber quarters have 74 total coins, and this one had 71 of the quarters. It didn't have the 96S, the 01S, or the 13S, which are rare, but it did have all the rest of the key coins and semi-key coins. And so this was not a bad set, even though I paid more for this set per ounce than anything else that I have bought recently. As a matter of fact, I paid $109.81 an ounce for that set. But that was at the time where silver was starting to get up to $100 an ounce. And so I was really only paying about $10 more per ounce than silver was going for. And even though this was 90% silver, a Barber quarter set is a fairly nice set to get if you can get it anywhere around spot price. And so, again, this was the one I paid the most per face value and per ounce. But again, I'm pleased that I got that. The next set I got was on the 22nd now of January. Now we are at $100 an ounce. And this was a Washington quarter set. It was a complete quarter set at that. Included the 32D and the 32S, and there are some fairly nice coins in this. And it even went beyond 1964 and included all the mint coins until 1999. And as you can see, those are all pretty well uncirculated, as were some of the more recent 90%. And so for that particular set, I paid $1,275. There was about $16 non-silver face value in that. But there was also $20.75 face. I paid $60 times face for that set, which is pretty high. I had just sold my silver for about 56 times face. But again, this was a complete set, a fairly nice set at that. And so I paid $83.93 an ounce for this set after having sold a bunch of 90% for $77 an ounce. So I ended up paying $7 an ounce over what I had sold the other, but again, a complete set. And hopefully you're starting to see a pattern here. We're getting collectible coins, and collectible coins hold their value. I bought another set towards, I think on the 29th of January, that included a Roosevelt dime set, a Franklin half-dollar partial set, a complete piece dollar set, including a graded 1928, and then a near complete Walking Liberty half-dollar set with all of the keys on that. And so I paid for that about for that one I paid $4,250 or $81.33 an ounce. So quite a bit below the market value at that time, and about $40 below the high in silver of $120 that day. So I was thrilled to get that set. My point is on all this, on 90% silver, there are potential profit points and potential collectible numismatic points that are very enjoyable. And so even when 90% starts to fall out of favor, sometimes that brings the nicer sets out of the woodwork, and if you keep your eye open, you can sometimes get some very good deals off of eBay. I got this for $40 an ounce under what the spot price of silver was that day, and got some very nice coins at that. Since that point, the market has come substantially down, but it's still about where I paid for that very nice collector set. And so this is a point, if you are into collecting coins, that you can start taking advantage. You can start trading your junky coins for collectible coins, and whether the market goes down or not, you've still got the numismatic value there. I did want to make one other point. Somebody had pointed out that the Blue Book is not up to date on bullion prices, and that's true. I used the Blue Book for rare coin prices, and that's why I use that. Obviously, you want to look at the bullion value if you have just common 90%. Well, that's the video for today. A little bit longer, but I wanted to kind of share some of these things with you and maybe give you some ideas. If you want to get into the numismatic side, educate yourself first. I did for over 20 years. I'm not suggesting you have to do that, but I am suggesting you know what you're looking at so that when it comes in, you can then check and make sure it's not counterfeit, that it's legitimate, that it's something that you were expecting to get. And if that's the case, just put it away and be very grateful that you could buy something that was collectible, that has rarity value to it, and you're getting it very often below the price of silver. Well, that's the video for today. I hope that gives you some thoughts as far as how you might be investing in 90% silver now. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. I certainly appreciate your watching. Appreciate those of you who have subscribed, and I hope we will see you again next time. God bless.